And occasionally those big pieces of rock are big enough to cause mass devastation that easily take out a city, pretty easily take out a country, sometimes take out, like the one that took out the dinosaurs, take out pretty much every big living thing on the planet.
When NASA's live feed cut off without warning, they caught a glimpse of something before the blackout. What they saw broke every known law of physics, and Brian Cox, who has been silent until now, confirmed what scientists were too afraid to admit. This isn't just a glitch in the system. It's a signal that's been building for decades, hidden in plain sight. Why was the Voyager hijacked to deliver this message? And what happens now that the hidden network has fully activated? Join us as we find out what Brian Cox has to say after NASA cut the live feed. The object that broke physics. NASA's Deep Space Telescope was doing routine observations over the Pacific when the feed suddenly cut out. The object they spotted looked familiar at first. Elongated, tumbling, moving fast like the famous Oumuamua that visited us back in 2017. But this one behaved completely differently. Most things in space follow predictable paths. Rocks, comets, asteroids, they all obey gravity's rules. They speed up when approaching massive objects like our sun, then slow down as they move away. It's basic physics that's worked perfectly for centuries. This object threw those rules out the window. Instead of following a normal trajectory, it started changing direction. Not gradually, like a comet responding to solar wind, but sharp, deliberate course corrections. Then it did something that made every physicist watching scratch their heads. It slowed down as it got closer to Earth. Natural objects don't do that. When something approaches a planet, gravity pulls it faster, not slower. Yet, here was this visitor, deliberately hitting the brakes with no visible means of propulsion. No rocket exhaust, no gas jets, no spinning parts that might explain the deceleration. NASA's instruments picked up something even stranger. The object was generating microvibrations from inside its structure. These weren't random shakes from tumbling through space. The pattern suggested internal mechanisms, something actively working beneath the surface. The thermal readings got everyone's attention too. Most space rocks heat up unevenly as they rotate, creating hot spots where sunlight hits and cold zones in shadow. This object showed controlled temperature regulation across its entire surface. It was somehow managing its own heat distribution, almost like it was protecting itself from thermal stress. Then came the really puzzling part. Right before NASA lost the signal, their sensors detected organized electromagnetic pulses coming from the object. Not random static or interference, but structured signals with mathematical patterns. Prime numbers, to be specific, the kind of sequence that appears nowhere in nature, but shows up constantly in advanced mathematics. The object had positioned itself in a way that shouldn't be sustainable. It maintained a stable orbit without the usual elliptical motion that gravity creates. Instead, it held position like a satellite, requiring constant adjustments that no natural object could make. Every measurement contradicts what we understand about how things behave in space. Objects either have propulsion systems we can detect, or they follow the laws of orbital mechanics. This visitor seemed to ignore both options entirely. The scientific community went quiet fast. Within hours, the raw data disappeared from public databases. Research teams that had been analyzing the readings found their access suddenly restricted. The few details that leaked out before the lockdown painted a picture of something that operated by rules we don't recognize. Whatever this object was, it demonstrated capabilities that our current physics can't explain. It moved like technology, regulated temperature like a machine, and communicated like intelligence. Yet it showed none of the signatures we'd expect from any known propulsion or control system. The implications keep getting bigger the more you think about it. What kind of message could travel across the void of space, using patterns that appear nowhere in nature? Space communication protocol. The object wasn't just moving strangely, it was trying to talk. The electromagnetic signals coming from the object weren't random noise or interference. They followed a precise mathematical sequence that scientists recognize immediately: prime numbers. These are numbers that can only be divided by themselves, and 1, like 2, 3, 5, 7, 11. They show up constantly in advanced mathematics, but never occur naturally in space. The beam aimed directly at Earth's upper magnetosphere, the invisible magnetic bubble that protects our planet from solar radiation. This wasn't accidental targeting. The object had to understand our planet's magnetic structure to aim so precisely at that specific layer. After NASA cut its transmission, independent observatories in Chile and South Africa managed to capture more of these signals before their feeds also went dark. The data they recorded showed something that made the discovery even more unsettling. The electromagnetic bursts were transmitted in X-band frequencies, the same range that deep space missions use to communicate with Earth. This frequency choice wasn't random either. It's the optimal range for cutting through cosmic background noise and reaching our planet clearly. But the real shock came when researchers analyzed the signal patterns more closely. The mathematical sequence matched something humans had sent into space decades earlier, a fragment from the Voyager Golden Record. Specifically, it contained the sound pattern of a human heartbeat: 1 pulse, then 3, then 5, then silence. This wasn't just any heartbeat recording. It was the exact same audio file that NASA had included on the Golden Record back in 1977, when they launched it as a message to potential alien civilizations. The object had somehow accessed this specific piece of human audio and was playing it back with perfect fidelity. The timing of each pulse matched the original recording down to the millisecond. No approximation, no interpretation. An exact digital copy. This suggested the object didn't just intercept the signal randomly. It had deliberately accessed, stored, and was now retransmitting human-created content. The implications hit the scientific community hard. For an object to replay Earth's own transmissions with such precision, it would need sophisticated receiving equipment, massive data storage, and the ability to decode human digital formats. These aren't capabilities that natural space objects possess. Even more puzzling was the choice to use prime number intervals to structure the transmission. This mathematical approach represents a universal language concept that human scientists developed for communicating with alien intelligence. The object was using humanity's own theoretical framework for first contact. The signal pattern created what researchers call a mathematical mirror. It reflected human concepts back to Earth, using the exact protocols that human scientists had proposed for interstellar communication. This wasn't random mimicry. It demonstrated understanding of human communication theory. Radio astronomers noted another strange detail. The transmission power was calibrated perfectly to reach Earth's surface without causing interference to satellite networks or radio systems. This required precise knowledge of Earth's technological infrastructure and electromagnetic environment. The object had essentially announced its presence using humanity's own voice, transmitted through mathematical concepts that humans created, delivered at exactly the right frequency and power level to be received clearly on Earth. This wasn't just communication. It was proof that something had been listening to human transmissions for decades. The magnetic pulse and Voyager's hijacking that signal was just the beginning of something far more coordinated than anyone realized. On April 7th, something unprecedented happened that connected Earth to the furthest edges of our solar system in ways that shouldn't be possible. What could cause identical effects separated by 43 light hours of empty space? CERN's magnetometer array detected the impossible that day. These incredibly sensitive instruments normally measure tiny magnetic changes to calibrate the Large Hadron Collider's superconducting magnets. They can detect magnetic fluctuations smaller than anything most equipment could register. At exactly 1432 GMT, Every magnetometer in CERN's network registered the same distortion simultaneously. Not a regional effect, not localized interference, a global magnetic pulse that lasted precisely 0.72 seconds. The distortion rippled through Earth's entire magnetic field, like a wave passing through water. The pulse itself defied explanation. Natural magnetic events from solar storms or geomagnetic shifts create broad chaotic patterns. This signal showed structured harmonics, organized frequencies layered inside each other like musical chords. No known terrestrial phenomenon creates this kind of mathematical precision in magnetic fields. Solar activity monitoring stations ruled out space weather. Electrical grid operators confirmed no infrastructure failures. Seismic networks showed no earthquake activity that might cause electromagnetic effects. The pulse had no identifiable earthly source. Then came the data that changed everything. Voyager 1, humanity's most distant probe, sits 43 light-hours away in interstellar space. Its ancient instruments weren't designed to monitor low-frequency magnetic pulses. The spacecraft carries 1970s technology, basic sensors, limited computing power, and communication systems that barely function after decades in the void. Yet 43 hours after CERN's reading, NASA's Deep Space Network received an unexpected signal from Voyager. The timestamp matched Earth's magnetic event to the millisecond, accounting for the light travel time across that enormous distance. The signal contained data that Voyager had never recorded before. The spacecraft's onboard computer systems showed no log of creating this information. None of its sensors were capable of generating these readings. The transmission protocol didn't match any command sequence programmed into Voyager's memory banks. NASA engineers confirmed that the signal hadn't been sent using any known transmission method on the spacecraft. Voyager's communication system has specific protocols for data transmission, all documented and understood after decades of operation. This message used none of them. The data itself was mathematically elegant. Prime number sequences, logarithmic spirals, and binary patterns that resembled advanced error correction codes. These weren't random numbers or corrupted data. They showed the same structured complexity as the magnetic pulse detected on Earth. Most disturbing was how the data incorporated quantum error correction protocols. These are cutting-edge techniques that human scientists have only recently begun exploring for future space communications. Voyager was built decades before these concepts existed. Within hours of receiving this impossible transmission, NASA pulled all related data from public databases. Research teams that had been analyzing the readings found their access credentials suddenly revoked. Several scientists received direct calls instructing them not to analyze or replicate the findings. The official explanation cited routine maintenance and system updates. But the speed and thoroughness of the information lockdown suggested something far more significant than technical difficulties. Something had used Voyager 1 as a relay station, bypassing its original programming to send encoded information back to Earth. The ancient spacecraft had become a messenger for intelligence that understood both Earth's magnetic systems and humanity's most advanced communication theories. The coordination between Earth's magnetic pulse and Voyager's response implied a network spanning the entire solar system. If 2 points separated by the vastness of interstellar space could respond in perfect synchronization, what other nodes might be silently embedded throughout our solar system? The hidden network activates. The coordination between Earth and Voyager revealed something that had been hiding in plain sight for decades. Astronomers began pulling archived data from missions stretching back to the 1970s. What they found buried in decades of dismissed readings painted a picture of systematic activity that no one had recognized before. In 1973, a Soviet Venera probe recorded an unusual magnetic whine while passing behind Venus. Mission controllers attributed it to solar wind interference and filed it away. The signal lasted exactly 0.72 seconds, the same duration as the pulse detected by CERN. Galileo's 1989 flyby of asteroid Gaspra produced readings that puzzled scientists at the time. The asteroid's albedo, how much sunlight it reflects, changed dramatically during the spacecraft's approach. One moment, it appeared to be standard rocky material. Then it shifted to show metallic properties, then back to rock. The changes happened too quickly for natural surface variations. In 2003, the Cassini mission detected a brief polar inversion in Saturn's magnetosphere. The planet's magnetic field flipped orientation for 0.7 seconds, then returned to normal. Saturn's magnetic field is generated by liquid metallic hydrogen deep inside the planet. It doesn't just flip directions on its own. These events shared common characteristics that became obvious only when examined together. Each anomaly lasted less than 1 second. Each occurred when a human spacecraft passed within a specific distance. Each was dismissed as equipment malfunction or natural interference. The pattern suggested something far more organized than random cosmic events. Deep space communication networks use relay stations to maintain contact across vast distances. Signals bounce from station to station, amplified and redirected toward their destination. The concept works because each relay point knows when to listen and when to transmit. What if similar relay points had been positioned throughout the solar system long before human space exploration began? Objects that appear to be asteroids, comets, or space debris could function as dormant communication nodes. They would remain inactive for years or decades, indistinguishable from natural space rocks. But when triggered by specific conditions, like approaching spacecraft or coordinated signals, they could activate briefly before returning to dormancy. This would explain how the magnetic pulse on Earth could produce an immediate response from Voyager's location. The signal wouldn't need to travel 43 light hours in real time. Instead, it could propagate through a network of hidden relays, each one passing the message to the next, until it reached the edge of the solar system within hours. The relay network would need sophisticated timing mechanisms to coordinate transmissions across such distances. Each node would require power sources, receivers, transmitters, and processing capabilities advanced enough to interpret and redirect complex signals. More unsettling was the realization that this network had been responding to human activity for decades. Every major space mission seemed to trigger brief activations. The responses were so short and subtle that they appeared to be equipment glitches or natural phenomena. NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory began cross-referencing mission logs with unexplained anomalies. The correlation was undeniable. Wherever human spacecraft traveled, dormant objects showed brief signs of activity. The network wasn't just observing human space exploration, it was cataloging it. Each mission provided new data points about human technological capabilities, flight paths, and destinations. The system was learning about humanity's expansion into space with methodical precision. Radio telescope arrays started detecting faint signals at frequencies previously assumed to be cosmic background noise. When analyzed with new parameters, these signals showed the same mathematical structures found in the Earth Voyager transmission, prime number sequences, and error correction protocols. The hidden network had been active all along, communicating just below the threshold of human detection. If advanced intelligence had been silently cataloging human activity for decades, building detailed profiles of technological capability and behavioral patterns, what verdict might they have reached? The judgment has already begun. The network wasn't just watching humanity's progress through space, it was measuring whether the species deserved to continue. Brian Cox's warning about survival carried weight that most people missed. The respected physicist had access to classified data from multiple space agencies. His carefully chosen words suggested knowledge of something far more serious than a simple astronomical discovery. Cox's statement about being noticed first revealed the core problem. Humanity had been operating under the assumption that first contact would be a mutual discovery, two civilizations stumbling across each other in the cosmic dark. Instead, the evidence pointed to a scenario where advanced intelligence had been studying humanity long before humans developed space travel. The implications were staggering. Every human space mission, every radio transmission, every technological advancement had been observed and recorded by systems already in place throughout the solar system. Humanity wasn't making first contact, it was being evaluated. NASA's response to the crisis showed all the hallmarks of damage control under extreme pressure. Within hours of the Voyager transmission, entire databases went offline. Research teams found their security clearances revoked without explanation. Scientists scheduled for television interviews received calls telling them to cancel appearances. The speed of the information lockdown suggested coordination at the highest levels of government. Multiple space agencies across different countries implemented identical restrictions simultaneously. This wasn't bureaucratic confusion. It was a coordinated response to a specific threat assessment. Several high-profile astrophysicists suddenly became unavailable for public comment. A Princeton researcher who had been analyzing the object's thermal signatures took an unscheduled sabbatical. A Caltech data analysis team took their entire server network offline for what they called routine maintenance. The Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence Institute, known as SETI, went completely silent. Their usual stream of research updates and public statements stopped entirely. Their website began displaying generic information about telescope calibration projects instead of current findings. Even more telling was the behavior of independent observatories. Amateur astronomers who had been tracking the object found their equipment experiencing unexplained interference. Telescope feeds showed signal distortion, positional drift, and lens degradation that made continued observation impossible. A leaked memo from NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory classified the object's current flight path as restricted information. This classification level is typically reserved for military satellites and defense-related missions. Natural astronomical objects don't receive security classifications. The object itself hadn't disappeared. Tracking data suggested it had moved to a geosynchronous orbit above Earth's magnetic equator. This position would be impossible for any natural object to maintain without constant propulsion adjustments. The orbit required the object to match Earth's rotation precisely while maintaining a fixed distance from the surface. Atmospheric monitoring stations in Brazil, Ghana, and Indonesia detected periodic pressure anomalies in their vertical air columns. These disturbances aligned with the object's orbital position and suggested something was moving between the upper atmosphere and space on a regular schedule. The pattern indicated active reconnaissance rather than passive observation. Something was making repeated trips between orbital space and Earth's atmosphere, gathering information through direct sampling rather than remote sensing. Cox's warning about survival wasn't philosophical speculation. It was based on evidence that humanity had triggered some kind of evaluation protocol. The question wasn't whether aliens existed. It was whether humans had passed whatever test they had unknowingly been taking. The silence from official sources wasn't protecting public safety. It was managing humanity's response to judgment. What if we've already been judged? How long have they been watching us? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.